were forming Black Sabbath, you were looking for a lead singer and spotted an ad from Ozzy Osbourne in a music store?
I mean, Ozzy was at school in a younger year than me.
Yeah.
With me. They were just coming out, and it was almost like a magical force pushing these things out that we didn't.
Ozzy Osbourne's rise to fame with Black Sabbath was never about technical skill or perfect vocals. From the very beginning, people noticed his raw, unusual voice, one that didn't follow the rules of rock or metal singing. In the early 1970s, when heavy metal was still forming, Ozzy appeared on the scene as a strange, unpredictable singer with a presence that could capture attention immediately. To the general public, Ozzy was the madman, a frontman who seemed wild and dangerous. He was known for his eccentric behavior, the famous bat-biting incident, and a stage persona that made fans unsure of what he would do next. Audiences were drawn to him because he seemed alive, chaotic, and full of emotion. Critics, on the other hand, were less impressed. Compared to other singers of the time, like Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin or Ian Gillan of Deep Purple, Ozzy's voice seemed limited. He couldn't reach extreme high notes with controlled power. His range was narrow, and he didn't have the precise technique that many believed defined great rock singers. To casual observers, he seemed almost amateurish, a singer who could carry a tune but lacked polish. However, those who worked closely with him understood something different. Tony Iommi, Black Sabbath's legendary guitarist and the architect of the band's sound, spent countless hours rehearsing, recording, and refining the music with Ozzy. Tony knew every strength and weakness of the singer, and he understood that Ozzy's so-called limitations were not flaws. They were the very reason his voice could create something unique. While trained singers focused on power, range, and precision, Ozzy's voice carried emotion that no technique could replicate. It had a human quality that drew listeners in and made the dark, heavy riffs of Black Sabbath's music feel real and threatening. Tony Iommi recognized that it was this emotional authenticity that would make Ozzy irreplaceable. From their earliest collaborations, Tony experimented with different vocalists, searching for someone whose voice could match the weight and darkness of his riffs. He saw the young Ozzy's potential quickly, noticing a quality beyond notes, phrasing, or control. There was a tension in his voice, a fragility, and a vulnerability that matched perfectly with the themes of fear, doom, and darkness that the band explored. Tony knew that most trained vocalists would have added power, polished out every crack, and removed the raw emotion that made the music alive. Instead, Ozzy's untrained voice, with its occasional trembles and imperfections, became a vessel for the atmosphere of Black Sabbath. One song in particular showcased this better than anything else. On this track, Tony recognized that Ozzy was performing something that no other singer, no matter how skilled, could replicate. It was a moment where technical skill became irrelevant, and the power of authenticity took over. Tony's riffs, dark and foreboding, created an almost supernatural sense of dread, and Ozzy's voice brought it to life in a way that felt genuinely haunted. The song opened with a musical introduction unlike anything the rock world had heard before. Rain and thunder could almost be imagined as part of the recording, while the guitar riff Tony created used the tritone interval, sometimes called the Devil's Interval by medieval musicians for its unsettling sound. These three notes immediately produced unease and tension. And then Ozzy's voice entered. It did not soar with technical perfection. It trembled, faltered slightly, and carried a raw fear that made the listener feel the weight of the song's darkness. Critics may have noted his lack of training, but Tony knew that his imperfections were precisely what gave the performance power. Ozzy's voice sounded like someone confronting real horror. The opening line of the song, delivered with this vulnerability, set the tone for everything that followed. Tony realized immediately that he had found a rare voice, one that could not be replicated or replaced. He saw Ozzy transform the guitar riffs into something alive, something terrifying, something emotionally real. And in that moment, the guitar and the voice became inseparable, forming the unique Black Sabbath sound that would influence decades of heavy metal and hard rock music to come. The audience may not have noticed every subtle detail in the performance, but they felt it. The fear, darkness, and haunting emotion were palpable. People were drawn in, not just because of the novelty of the music, but because of Ozzy's ability to make them feel as if they were experiencing the song in real life. This was the essence of why Tony Iommi considered Ozzy's voice unmatched. It wasn't about notes or range or control. It was about conveying something real, human, and terrifying. Over the years, as Ozzy's reputation grew, many people misunderstood his vocal style. Fans celebrated the eccentricity and chaos, often mistaking it for madness. Critics dismissed his talent because it didn't fit the expected mold of a skilled singer. But Tony, who spent every day creating and shaping Black Sabbath's music with him, knew the truth. Ozzy's voice was a perfect instrument for the world they were building together. The imperfections, the cracks, the trembles, all of it was necessary to create the mood and atmosphere of their music. And in this one song, everything came together. Ozzy sang with a vulnerability that no trained singer would dare to show. He made listeners feel real fear, real dread, and real darkness. Tony understood that this was the moment when Black Sabbath became more than just a band. It became a living, breathing experience that could not be duplicated. The song was not just a demonstration of vocal talent. It was a demonstration of emotional mastery, a performance where the voice served the music rather than the other way around. Tony's insight into this performance would define his collaboration with Ozzy for years to come, guiding decisions about production, rehearsal, and arrangement to ensure that the voice always complemented the darkness in the guitar, drums, and bass. And it was this understanding that helped Black Sabbath create a sound that would inspire countless musicians, proving that technical perfection is not always the most important factor in music. The combination of Ozzy's unique emotional delivery and Tony's innovative riffs created a blueprint for heavy metal that has never been equaled. The impact of Ozzy Osbourne's vocal performance on this song cannot be overstated. To the untrained ear, it might have sounded strange, rough, or limited. But to Tony Iommi, who carefully crafted every note, every chord, and every rhythmic choice, it was exactly what was needed. He knew that the sense of fear, unease, and darkness in the song had to be communicated in a human voice, not a polished performance. Every tremble, every slight crack, and every wavering note contributed to the emotional atmosphere. Technical singers often strive to remove these imperfections, smoothing everything out and controlling dynamics. But in this case, that kind of control would have destroyed the effect. Ozzy's voice had a conversational quality, as if he were speaking directly to the listener, telling them a terrifying story they could not ignore. The intimacy of his delivery made the horror real. Fans might have thought he was just shouting or acting mad, but Tony knew that Ozzy was expressing something deeply genuine. The audience felt it because the voice was unfiltered and authentic. The interplay between Tony's guitar and Ozzy's vocals also demonstrated musical genius that existed outside conventional technique. The riff was dark, ominous, and almost hypnotic, using intervals and rhythms that were unsettling. Ozzy's voice responded to this environment perfectly, not by overpowering it with range or power, but by embodying the mood, trembling, whispering, and rising when necessary. In musical terms, his emotional dynamics created a kind of range that went beyond notes. He didn't need to hit high octaves or sustain long notes. Instead, the shift in intensity, tone, and timbre created a sense of movement that matched the song's story. Each phrase told a part of the narrative: fear, despair, and confrontation with the unknown. The song became an immersive experience for anyone listening. Even those who did not understand musical theory could feel the darkness and tension that the combination of guitar and vocals produced. Tony Iommi recognized that this performance was revolutionary because it showed that traditional measures of skill were not the only path to greatness. In fact, in some ways, they were irrelevant. Ozzy's voice was proof that emotional authenticity could surpass technical perfection. In a genre often focused on power, control, and bravado, this approach was groundbreaking. It demonstrated that vulnerability, honesty, and imperfection could be far more powerful than flawless execution. The effect of this realization shaped Black Sabbath's career. Tony continued to prioritize working with Ozzy rather than seeking a more technically trained singer, understanding that no one else could replicate the emotional impact he brought to the music. Over the years, this partnership defined heavy metal's vocal style, influencing countless artists who realized that raw emotion could create a stronger connection with listeners than technical skill alone. The emotional mastery in this song also forced critics to reconsider what it meant to be a great singer. While Ozzy may not have matched the precision of Robert Plant or Ian Gillan, he achieved something neither of them could: the ability to convey real fear and darkness in a way that immersed the audience completely. His performance was not about impressing listeners with technique, but about making them feel the atmosphere of the song. Each note served a purpose, each crack told a story, and each tremble built tension. The conversational tone of his singing made listeners feel included, as though they were part of the haunting experience rather than passive observers. Tony's vision, combined with Ozzy's unique voice, created a new standard for what vocal performance could achieve in heavy metal. It was not about perfection, it was about impact, authenticity, and the ability to embody the music. Every time the band performed this song live, Ozzy brought the same raw emotion to the stage, connecting with the audience in a way that technical skill alone could never achieve. This demonstrated that true mastery is not always measured in notes or technique, but in the ability to communicate the essence of a song. Tony understood this instinctively, and it guided him as a guitarist, songwriter, and producer. It also explained why Black Sabbath's sound was so revolutionary. While other bands relied on powerful vocals or flashy guitar solos, Black Sabbath relied on the marriage of darkness and emotion. Tony's riffs created the framework, but it was Ozzy's voice that made it human, relatable, and terrifying. Together, they created an experience that has endured for decades. Even today, when listeners hear this song, they can feel the tension, fear, and atmosphere that Tony and Ozzy captured. The performance is timeless, not because it demonstrates vocal skill in a traditional sense, but because it captures something far more important: human emotion in its rawest form. This principle became a guiding force in Ozzy's career. He learned to embrace his imperfections, to use his voice as a tool for expression rather than comparison. Tony's understanding of this made him the perfect collaborator, knowing exactly how to arrange the music to allow Ozzy's voice to shine in its authentic form. In retrospect, it is clear that this song defined what made Ozzy Osbourne irreplaceable. Many vocalists could imitate his style superficially, but no one could replicate the emotional depth, the fear, and the honesty that his voice brought to the music. It was a performance that could only come from him, and Tony Iommi recognized that immediately. The genius of this performance is most evident when analyzing the emotional control Ozzy displayed throughout the song. While most singers aim for consistency, smoothness, and technical precision,